Chapter 3, Listening. Couchsurfing. Listen to a professor in a sociology class. The professor is discussing a type of social networking site.
Okay, today we're going to be examining the growth of one type of internet-based social networking site. Now, unlike generic sites like, say, Facebook or MySpace, this site caters only to travelers who are looking to exchange free accommodation with others from around the globe. So, with over 1 million registered users, these hospitality networks ask people to post a profile with their location, the type of housing they have, and photos of themselves and their homes. The largest website, couchsurfing.org, offers free lodging in over 230 countries. It also boasts over 1 million positive experiences and close to 650,000 international friendships formed. So, why are hospitality networks so popular? Well, first, the accommodation is free, and that really cuts down on travel costs. Plus, it gives the traveler a chance to spend more time traveling. Second, because travelers leave references about their hosts, website users can make a reservation based on what other guests had to say. So this establishes the reputation of a particular host, and it develops a sense of trust and security within the hospitality network community. Third, the sites offer more than just a place to stay. They offer social opportunities. What I mean is, travelers can connect with potential friends from their travel destination before they leave and make plans to meet for coffee or a night on the town. It's great to have ready-made friends when arriving in a new city. Fourth, there's a sense of give and take. So while members benefit from free lodging and even friendship when they travel, they also offer the same thing in return. And finally, with hospitality networks, you don't have to view a new city from the outside by visiting tourist attractions and staying in hotels with other tourists. Instead, you get an insider's view as to what it is really like to live in the location. And for most people, that's what traveling is all about.
Chapter 3, Listening. Conversation. Listen to a conversation between a student and a student housing advisor.
Hi, I'm wondering if you could give me a little bit of information.
Yes? What would you like to know?
Well, I'm trying to decide whether to live on or off campus. So, I wanted to know the pros and cons of both so that I could make an informed decision. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, you've come to the right place. Now, I don't want to sell you on one option or the other, but it all depends what kind of experience you're looking for.
Well, I'm new in town, so I guess I wouldn't mind meeting some new people. But then again, I need a fair amount of peace and quiet so that I can focus on my studies, right?
Okay. Living in residence is a great way to meet lots of people, and most buildings are equipped with study halls where you can focus on your work. There's no talking, it's completely quiet. And of course, you can get a single accommodation and simply close the door.
So, I don't need to have a roommate?
No, there are a lot of single rooms.
I see. And what are the rooms like?
Well, they're fairly basic. You get a bed, a dresser, a bookcase, a desk, and a chair. And of course, there's a phone and internet access.
And so what kind of common facilities are available?
Well, there's a kitchen, a dining hall, a TV room, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of opportunities for socializing and meeting new people.
Oh, sounds good.
And most single suites are on one floor opening into a hallway, with an adjoining common room on that same floor so that you can get to know your neighbors. It's all very friendly.
Great.
Hey, why don't you sign up for a tour of the dorms so you can see them for yourself? And here's a link to the off-campus housing website so you can see what else is available. People usually post photos and provide contact information.
Thanks for the link. I'll look into that. Where's the sign-up sheet?
On the main bulletin board, right over there.
Okay. Thanks for your help.
Chapter 3, Listening. Global Warming. Listen to a lecture in a climatology class.
All right, let's begin. So, global warming. Global warming is a fact. Experts agree that land and ocean temperatures have risen around 1 degree Fahrenheit within the last 100 years. Now, while this may not seem like much, climatologists also warn that the current warming trend may in fact be speeding up.
Speeding up? How so?
Well, for one thing, the 14 hottest years on record have occurred within the past decade and a half. And the reasons for this increase in the rate of climate change are all about a rise in greenhouse gas emissions due to human activity since the Industrial Revolution. Now, while a natural greenhouse effect keeps the Earth warm enough to live on, the added human-made gases, such as carbon dioxide, methane, ozone, CFCs, and nitrous oxide, all work together to form what scientists call an enhanced greenhouse effect. In other words, the greater the concentration of greenhouse gases, the warmer the Earth gets. And ever since the Industrial Revolution, there has been a huge increase in these gases, mainly from carbon dioxide and the burning of fossil fuels, such as coal and oil.
Just how much of an increase?
CO2 emissions have risen 130 times since the mid-19th century, and the estimated increase by 2030 is for another 60%. So scientists say that if steps are not taken to reduce emissions by between 50 and 80% within the next decade, global temperatures could climb by up to 10 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the 21st century. And this could mean disastrous consequences for humankind. Truth be known, many of the scientific claims regarding the projected impacts of global warming are fast becoming our current reality. There are more severe heat waves, vanishing glaciers and sea ice, and more powerful storms, especially hurricanes.
So what does this mean?
Well, heat waves kill. Disappearing glaciers mean a dramatic decrease in water supplies for the many people who depend on them. Melting ice sheets have the potential to raise sea levels to such an extent that they could flood every coastal city in the U.S. by the end of the 21st century. Hurricanes, such as Katrina, rip apart people's lives and destroy their livelihoods. Scientists forecast a continuation and worsening of unpredictable weather that will intensify natural disasters, wreak havoc with ecosystems, and foster the spread of disease due to a decline in air and water quality.
Chapter 3, Listening. Conversation. Listen to a student talking to his professor.
Hi, Professor. May I come in?
Sure. You wanted to discuss your presentation?
Uh-huh.
And what's your topic?
Taking a personal stand against global warming.
Interesting. So you're planning to inform people on what they can do?
Yeah, but I mean, the idea's kind of tired, you know? I mean, we hear it every day, so I'm thinking it's not really going to grab people's attention, you know what I mean?
Well, sure, I guess. But it's a valid topic for the environmental studies course, and I'm thinking there may be some ways you can spice up your presentation.
Really? Like what?
Well, for instance, instead of telling people what to do, why don't you have them brainstorm ideas in groups to see which group can come up with the longest list?
Yeah, that's an idea.
And then hit them with some information they may not have heard before. Surprise them with something that will really make an impact on them.
Like what?
Well, I was just reading this website the other day. I can give you the URL if you'd like. And it not only provided tips about what individuals can do to limit CO2 emissions, but it spelled out just how many pounds of carbon dioxide would be reduced per year by simple things that anyone could do.
Yeah, I'd really like to see that website. Do you remember any of the figures offhand, or?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I was particularly struck by the fact that if every household replaced one regular light bulb with a compact fluorescent bulb, we would do away with 90 billion pounds of greenhouse gas emissions, almost the same as taking 7.5 million cars off the road.
Man, that's amazing. I never realized light bulbs could have such a huge effect.
See what I mean? So you could get the class to brainstorm ideas, and then you provide them with some shocking information about how much of an impact these individual differences can make. I think it'd be a real eye-opener for some of them.
You're telling me.
Wait, here's the print out of the web page. You can have it. Remember, the figures only apply if every household in the country carries them out.
Right. So, reducing household waste, goodbye to 275 billion pounds of carbon dioxide. Lower the thermostat by 2 degrees, save 226 billion pounds of CO2 emissions. Whoa. Choose products without excess packaging like molded plastics and get rid of 136 billion pounds of greenhouse gas emissions. Hey, this is great stuff. Thanks, Professor. I like this idea and also the brainstorming concept to get people involved.
And what about bringing in some examples of things you're discussing so that people will more readily understand?
You mean like bring in a compact fluorescent bulb and examples of excess packaging, that kind of thing?
Now you've got the idea.
Chapter 3, Listening. A living home. Listen to a professor in an architecture class.
Okay, so we're in the business of building homes. But as you all know, this activity has a highly negative impact on the environment. First, we add carbon dioxide emissions by using power tools to cut down trees. And these trees, as a result, are no longer able to cleanse the air by taking in carbon dioxide. Next, we burn gasoline, a fossil fuel that leaks lethal gases into the air as we transport these trees to sawmills. And in these mills, toxic emissions multiply as we transform the trees into lumber. And the list goes on as we burn even more gasoline transporting this lumber to the worksite, where we again use power tools that release more CO2 into the air. And then finally, as a home's life cycle comes to an end, we demolish it via cranes, tractors, and explosives, and then dump the remains into a landfill. And in that landfill, they decompose only to emit methane, a full 21 times more dangerous than carbon dioxide in terms of its global warming effects. So, enter the eco-house, complete with solar power and recycled building materials. A dream come true? Well, one group of architects at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology do not believe the standard eco-house goes far enough. Instead, this MIT group has proposed an ultra-modern, two-story home made mainly of living trees and other organic materials. Apparently, the living home can be grown from a few seeds in a relatively short period. Grow your own house. They call it the Fab Tree Hab, short for Fabulous Tree Habitat. Just think, a home that produces no negative environmental impacts and, in fact, improves the environment by cleansing the air. The MIT group proposes to grow tree homes on site. They've designed the basic framework using controlled tree growth and a horticultural method called pleaching or branch weaving. So, to create the basic dome shape, they weave tree branches together and then fill in any gaps with vines, soil, and growing plants. And then, these plants form decorative gardens on the outside walls. For insulation, they use a mixture of clay and straw. And then they cover inside walls with smooth clay. Even windows made of soy-based material flex with the home as it grows. A rooftop container collects rainwater for in-house use. And then, this water is purified in a nearby pond. And the pond comes complete with bacteria, fish, and plants that consume the waste products. A mix of solar and wind power provides energy for the home. This, along with wireless internet and communication technologies, make it very similar to any other modern home. The only difference is that it is a living and breathing ecosystem that contributes to the health of the environment.
Chapter 3, Listening. Virtual Reality. Listen to a discussion in a pre-med class.
All right. So today we're going to get into some new uses for virtual reality. Can anyone define virtual reality for me?
It's a computer-generated three-dimensional world where users feel so totally into it that they actually feel they're a part of this world. And that's because they usually interact with the environment in some way.
Yeah, that about sums it up. Okay, so first example, a new type of virtual reality in robotic surgical system. The first of its kind was developed for use in the military so that surgeons could operate at a distance from injured soldiers on the front lines. So, what happens is that the doctor performs surgery using a 3D monitor and hand controls. And these hand controls communicate the same movements to a robotic system. And then the robotic system carries out the operation up to 150 yards away. Now, this system proved so useful during wartime that a new and improved version is now changing the way doctors perform surgery. And this is because it offers a lot of advantages over the traditional operating team. First, the 3D robotic system operates using endoscopic rods equipped with a camera and various surgical instruments. So the rods, with a diameter of a typical pencil, minimize incisions quite a bit, and this reduces blood loss and recovery time for the patient. Second, the camera can zoom in on and enlarge very small regions. So this allows for more precision. Third, the typical surgery only requires one surgeon, an anesthesiologist, and a couple of nurses instead of the dozen or so medical personnel needed in today's typical operating room. And this cuts costs dramatically. Now, has anyone heard of any other examples of virtual reality in medicine?
What about for distraction purposes? I've heard that dentists use 3D games and movies to reduce pain for their clients.
That's right. Another example would be burn victims who enter a virtual environment like Snow World to ease pain that not even morphine can subdue.
Yeah, and I read an article where hospital-ridden cancer patients benefit by visiting virtual locations like a tropical island, where they can reconnect with the feeling of being outdoors.
And then there are virtual environment solutions to phobias such as fear of flying, fear of heights, and fear of public speaking. In the past, psychologists used exposure therapy to treat patients with irrational fears. However, this can be quite costly and time-consuming. Let's say, for example, you are treating someone with a fear of flying. Now, as we all know, a plane ticket is fairly expensive. On the other hand, virtual reality is highly convenient. There's no need to even step outside the doctor's office.
Chapter 3, Listening Test. Conversation. Listen to a student talking to her advisor.
Hi.
So, you asked to see me. What can I help you with today?
Well, I'm kind of down. I'm not sleeping well and I find I'm getting angry a fair bit. There are a lot of things about this place, this city, that are getting on my nerves. I'm finding everyone really unfriendly and I can't seem to concentrate on my studies and, I really think I made a mistake in deciding to study here.
And so, just how long have you been here?
2 months. At first, I found leaving here really fun. New sights and sounds, it was all very exciting, but now I just want to go back to my country.
What you're describing sounds an awful lot like culture shock to me.
Culture shock? Yeah, I've heard about it. What is it exactly?
Well, it happens to almost everyone who travels to a foreign country. And there are several distinct stages. First, you've got your honeymoon stage, when everything is rosy, like when you first arrived and everything was fun. But then, when the novelty wears off, you begin to experience the kinds of symptoms you're describing right now. It's completely normal.
Normal? That's good.
So the phase you're in now, it's called the rejection phase. What happens is that you begin to notice the cultural differences, and you find them disturbing. It's really quite overwhelming to be in a new cultural environment, where the customs, the body language, even the words, the idioms, and the slang are completely different from what you're used to. It really does take some adjustment.
So how long is this going to last?
Well, at this point, you can either move into the recovery phase or the regression phase, depending on how much you reject the new culture. Sounds like you may be headed for regression, which means that you'll speak your native language a lot with your friends from your country and do a fair amount of complaining about the new culture.
So, what's recovery and how do I get there?
Well, recovery happens when you become more familiar with the culture and begin to accept it. Sometimes you even find there are things you like better about this country than your own. When that happens, you'll know you're into recovery.
Sounds like I'm pretty far from it at this point. Is there anything I can do to speed things up?
Sure. Well, check out this pamphlet. It describes culture shock and has tips for newcomers, like how to adjust more quickly.
Okay.
For instance, experts advise that you develop relationships with the locals. Maybe take an interest in class or join a sports group. You'll gain a lot of understanding about how and why people act the way they do if you learn from a friend. By the way, you can stop by my office anytime to chat. It's good to vent and get things off your chest.
You can say that again. I'm starting to feel better already. Just understanding the problem and having a couple of coping strategies, that should put me on track again. Thanks for your help.
Listen again to part of the conversation.
For instance, experts advise that you develop relationships with the locals. Maybe take an interest in class or join a sports group. You'll gain a lot of understanding about how and why people act the way they do if you learn from a friend. By the way, you can stop by my office anytime to chat. It's good to vent and get things off your chest.
You can say that again.
Why does the student say this?
You can say that again.
Chapter 3, Listening Test. The Milgram Experiment. Listen to a lecture in a psychology class.
Today we'll be discussing a rather disturbing psychological experiment. Disturbing in a number of ways. but mainly because it demonstrates how a certain type of environment can get people to act against their will. In this study, Yale University psychologist Stanley Milgram set up an experiment to show that people would submit to authority even in a situation that went against their own personal beliefs and morals. What he did was to ask them to inflict pain and suffering on a fellow human being. The experimental setup included 3 people. There was an experimenter who played the part of the authority figure. Then there was an actor who performed as the learner. And finally, the participant had the role of the teacher. All participants were told that the purpose of the study was to assess learning and memory in various situations. So participants were teachers, and they had to teach word pairs to the learner in an adjacent room. And if the learner made any mistakes, they had to give the person an electric shock. And just so participants would know what they were doing, they all got a 45-volt electric shock at the outset of the experiment. And as the trial progressed, the experimenter, who was the authority figure, told the teacher to give stronger and stronger shocks. And this was up to a maximum of 450 volts. Now, it's true that the learner did not really feel these shocks, but pre-recorded screams, taped screams for various shock levels, were played back so that the teacher really thought that the learner was suffering. And then, after the shock level went up several times, the actor began pounding on the walls and complaining of a heart condition. Following this, all sound from the adjacent room abruptly stopped. While many participants asked about how the learner was doing, few found the courage to stop the experiment despite the fact that the learner seemed to be in real pain. If at any time they questioned the purpose of the research or asked if they could stop, the experimenter encouraged them to continue with these 4 prompts in the following order. 1. Please continue. 2. The experiment requires that you continue. 3. It is absolutely essential that you continue. 4. You have no other choice. You must go on. If the participants still wanted to stop, the study was called off. Otherwise, it continued until the person had given 3 shocks in a row at the maximum intensity of 450 volts. The results of the Milgram experiment revealed that a full 65%, or 26 out of 40 participants, gave in to authority in delivering the 3 final 450-volt shocks. It is a fact that almost all of them questioned the intent of the research at some point. But the authority of the experimenter was enough to make them carry out the task. In other words, they inflicted what they believed to be intense suffering on another human being. This compliance with authority at the obvious expense of another reveals a rather frightening aspect of human nature. People working under an authority figure, even if not openly aggressive themselves, may end up inflicting serious damage at the whim of their superior. In a variation of this experiment, participants performed a secondary task. For example, they wrote down the students' answers. And this happened while another actor acted as a fully compliant teacher who obeyed the experimenter's every instruction. In this scenario, 37 out of 40, or 92.5% of participants, fully submitted to authority. These results show that an authority figure with some element of a following wields a whole lot of power. In fact, they have so much power that they can get almost anyone to go against their will, and even commit immoral acts. Surprisingly, the majority of the participants were happy they took part in the study. And one man wrote back to say that the whole thing had taught him to be more aware of the power of authority and to take the time to question it. As a result, he decided to dodge the draft and not go to war because he didn't believe in it.
Listen again to part of the conversation.
And as the trial progressed, the experimenter, who was the authority figure, told the teacher to give stronger and stronger shocks. And this was up to a maximum of 450 volts. Now, it's true that the learner did not really feel these shocks, but pre-recorded screams, taped screams for various shock levels, were played back so that the teacher really thought that the learner was suffering. And then, after the shock level went up several times, the actor began pounding on the walls and complaining of a heart condition. Following this, all sound from the adjacent room abruptly stopped.
What is the professor's attitude towards the experiment?